Let me thank Mr. Pradinath and Department of Law, University of Jaffna, giving the opportunity to the BOI to take part of this guest lecture series organized by your department. As you all are aware, today my topic is the role of the BOI in economic development of Sri Lanka. I have structured my presentation under 9 subheadings. You can see that subheading, need not to tell. First, a BOI, a brief history. I believe that all of you at least heard about BOI. What is BOI? Simply, BOI is a statutory body established by the act passed by the parliament. You all are aware, Sri Lanka was the first in the South Asian region to liberalize its economy to promote foreign direct investment way back in 1978. To achieve this target, the BOI was established. The BOI was incorporated as a statutory body in 1978, named Greater Colombo Economic Commission by GCEC Act number 4 of 1978. 14 years later, in 1992, the commission was reconstituted as the BOI and expanding its scope to cover entire country. Earlier, our scope was limited to the designated zones such as Katunayaka, Biyagama, Koggal. After this reconstitution, entire country treated as a zone. The BOI is structured to function as a central facilitation point for investors. From inquiry point, after cancellation of agreement, from born to death, we are looking our investors. To operate as an autonomous statutory body that is now directly responsible to the President of Sri Lanka. It has a board of directors drawn from the private and public sectors, including some observers from the General Treasury, sometimes Ministry of Finance. I think you all are aware that one of the best known entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka, Mr. Upali Wilegoda, was the first chairman of the BOI. Then, key objectives of the BOI. You can see 7 key objectives according to the BOI Act. BOI, the reason for establishing BOI is to achieve this objective. First is to foster and generate the economic development. Second one, to widen and strengthen the base of the economy. It means BOI was successfully operated to widen the base of the economy from agricultural economy to industrialized economy. Third one is to encourage and promote foreign investment within the Republic. Fourth one, to diversify the source of foreign exchange earnings and to increase export earnings. Later we will explain. To encourage and foster the establishment and development of industrial and commercial enterprises within the Republic was the fifth one. Sixth one, to administer the affairs of the area of authority. Seventh one, do all such other acts as may be necessary or conducive to attainment of any of or all of the above objects. Then the role of the BUI. First one, BUI is the apex agency to attract and facilitate foreign investment. It means the BUI is the sole government agency responsible for facilitating foreign direct investment to the country. It is structured to function as a central facilitation point for investors. We are providing all the services for foreign investment, not only foreign or local investment. Second one, facilitation from inquiry point to lifetime of the project. BUI acting as the first point of contact for both domestic and foreign investors who intend to set up projects in several sectors, such as manufacturing, service, it may be infrastructure, maybe utilities in Sri Lanka. Investor can decide what sector he is going to invest. Third one, evaluation of investment application for identified sectors. Evaluation of investment application for identified sectors granting incentives. Investors such as custom duty exemptions. Earlier, we granted tax holidays and sometimes recommendation for obtaining visa for foreign investors as well as foreign expatriate. Fourth one, provide investor aftercare. When the company sign agreement with the BOI, the incentives granted and commitment made to an eligible company remain valid for the lifetime of the enterprise. It will not during the project implementation period. The applicable incentives granted by the BOI agreement cannot be changed by the successive government. This is the fundamental strength of the BOI agreement, which ensured policy consistency. To attract foreign investors to any country, the policy consistency is the must. Fifth one, development and administration of export processing zone. That is our key role. There are 12 BOI zones at present we are operating. We can categorize these zones as export processing zone, then industrial park and industrial zone. There are 269 enterprises in commercial operation within these zones. In these zones, we are providing all necessary infrastructure for the investors, such as electricity, water, wastewater treatment, security, good road network, and 24 hours import-export facilitation services. Then our next role is diversify the source of foreign exchange earnings and increase the export earnings. The BOI helped to transform the country from agricultural export to industrial export. You know that now apparel and textiles become a major export product in Sri Lanka. Earlier it was tea, rubber, and coconut. Then main statutory provisions applicable to BOI project. Actually, The principal law applicable to both foreign and domestic investment is BOI Law number 4 of 1978 and subsequent amendments introduced from 1980 to 2012. And based on that law, time to time, subject Minister of Investment passed the regulation under this act. We can see 6 amendments. Please visit our BOI website. You can read more about these amendments and act. Time to time, on the requirement of the country, requirement of the investors, we have amended our BOI Act. Then, second statutory provisions applicable to BOI project is Inland Revenue Act number 24 of 2017. 2012, Amendment Act number 3 of 2000 granted tax holiday, but it was subsequently excluded from the Schedule B of the BOI Act. Therefore, now, if investors need tax holiday, we are using provision in the Inland Revenue Act number 24 of 2017. The IR Act number 24 of 2017, as amended by Act number 10 of 2021, provide an incentive regime consisting of tax exemptions, zero and reduced tax, income tax for specific sectors, and also enhanced capital allowances based on the capital investment made by the investors. Then another main statutory provision applicable to BOI is Companies Act number 7 of 2007. I think you are well aware about that. To have a BOI status, any investor should incorporate a company, Sri Lankan company, in accordance with the Companies Act. To incorporate a company in Sri Lanka, the provision of the Companies Act shall apply each nationals is guaranteed under this Companies Act. The difference between normal company and BOI company is to BOI company, there should be an objective clause. Now, according to the amendment to the Companies Act, the normally objective clause is open and run anything they need, they want. But BOI companies, we are limiting that objective to the approved activity. That is the difference. Then another important statutory provision is Foreign Exchange Act number 12 of 2017. In accordance with the Foreign Exchange Act number 12 of 2017, the minister in charge has gazetted relevant regulation in the extraordinary gazette within the exchange control provision applicable for foreign investors. We will explain later. Then Finance Act number 12 of 2012. We are granting certain exemptions under Finance Act number 12 of 2012, we call hub regulation. We will explain. Then Strategic Development Project Act number 14 of 2008. Actually, this act was passed to facilitate large-scale investment in Sri Lanka. You know that uh, even Port City, then uh, CICT, container terminal, Shangri-La, was like uh, big investment approved under the Statute number 14 of 2008. We are giving more concessions, including tax holidays based on the uh, value of the investment for projects using this Strategic Development Project Act. Then I will type of investment approval. The, the BOI Act provides for two types of investment approval. Type 1, approvals under Section 16 of the BOI Act number 4 of 1978. We call Section 16 projects. Projects approved under Section 16 of the BOI law to hold shareholding by the foreigners subject to the exclusion and limitation imposed in the Foreign Exchange Act. If foreigner, actually Section 16 company means being a local person, citizen of Sri Lanka, anyone can go to the register of companies and incorporate a company according to the applicable law. But this facility will not provide for the foreigners. Under Section 16 of the BOI law, we provide this facility for foreigners subject to certain and subject to fulfillment of certain conditions. First one is minimum investment. If foreigner need to set up a company under Section 16 of the BOI law, he should remit required minimum investment through the Inward Investment Account, IIA. The normal projects, the minimum investment threshold is 250,000. For some special project like retail trading, minimum investment threshold is $5 million. Prior to granting our approval, the investor should remit that money through an IIA, can be opened any commercial bank of Sri Lanka, and he should show the proof of remittances to the BOI. Under Section 16 of BOI law, certain categories are prohibited for foreigners, mainly three. First one is pawnbroking. Second one, coastal fishing. Coastal fishing, as defined by the Minister of Subject of Fisheries. Third one, retail trade where capital contributed by the person resident outside Sri Lanka will be less than 5 million. For certain areas, we will limit Section 16 approval of the project up to 40% of its shareholding to the foreigners. It means majority shareholder should be a Sri Lankan. I'll give some few examples. Mining and primary processing of non-renewable national resources such as graphite, silica, kind of thing. Timber-based industries using local timber, deep sea fishing, mass communication, education, freight forwarding, travel agencies, shipping agencies. To set up this kind of activity to company to carry out this kind of activity, the majority shareholder should be a Sri Lankan. We are granting only 40% of shares to the foreigners. But case by case basis, BOI have power to increase the percentage of shareholding for foreigners. There's certain activities we are permitting to carry out by the foreigner subject to special approval obtained from relevant line agencies. For example, air transportation, coastal shipping. Under Section 16 approval, we are providing facility to incorporate a new company as well as to transfer the shares of existing company to the foreigner. In type 2, approvals granted under Section 17 of the BOI Act. Actually, these projects are the real BOI projects. These projects are governed under BOI law. The export-oriented projects enjoy duty-free concession for the lifetime of the project. However, these companies which are local market-oriented and have been established under Section 17 of the BOI law are eligible to have duty-free facility during the project implementation period only. There are broad categories open for 18 categories. There are 18 categories broadly open for foreigners to have Section 17 approval. We will explain later. Under the BOI Act number 4 1978, the BOI shall have power to grant exemption for any of law referred in Schedule B of the BOI Act number 4 of 1978. First one, the Inland Revenue Act number 10 of 2006 and as amended. Second one, the Custom Ordinance. Third one, Exchange Control Act. Fourth one, the Companies Act number 7 of 2007. Fifth one, the Merchant Shipping Act number 52 of 1971. And then the Finance Act number 65 of 1961 and its amendments. The Air Navigation Act, also the National Film Corporation Act. The BOI can supersede any of Act, but subsequently, the Inland Revenue Act was excluded from the Schedule B of BOI Act. Therefore, from 2012, we don't have power to supersede Inland Revenue Act. Therefore, we are using existing Inland Revenue Act to grant concession. Initial steps to invest in Sri Lanka. Foreigner or local businessmen should follow certain steps to have a BOI company, to incorporate a BOI company and to get BOI concession. First, he should identify the business activity and submit an application to BOI with project proposal. Please visit our website. We have categorically mentioned the activities. There are 18 activities broadly categorized for to have a BOI projects. they can identify one of any business from these 18 projects categories to set up a BUI company. Also, to accept the application, the investor should have a minimum investment. We have mentioned that minimum investment threshold in our website. For an example, if someone need to set up a company to production or manufacture of non-traditional goods for export, it means we are not allowing foreigner or local person to have a BUI status for traditional export such as tea, rubber, coconut or paddy. Those are open for non-BUI companies. Why we are not granting approval for traditional exporters? To create level playing field. Being a BOI company, if we grant approval for traditional exporters, they can't, the existing non-BOI companies cannot compete with the BOI company. Therefore, we are not granting approval for traditional export. If someone needs to set up a company for non-traditional goods for export, the company should invest US $500,000 and not less than 80% of output should be exported. Then export of service. The minimum required investment is US $500,000. And that company should receive not less than 70% of the turnover in convertible foreign currency. It means dollar, yen, or yuan, any currency accepted in Central Bank of Sri Lanka. They should receive. Not BOI will grant approval not only for the exporters or service company. We will grant approval for large-scale service project as well. The minimum investment threshold is US $5 million. Also, we are granting approval for small-scale infrastructure projects such as mini hydropower projects, tourism, hotels, construction and operation of warehouses, garbage collection and disposal, construction of supermarket, construction of and operation of hospital, and water supply. The required minimum investment is US $500,000. For these local market oriented projects will be eligible to import their capital and construction item during the project implementation period free of customs duty. Then another important area for BOI is construction of houses. You can see in Colombo, there are many apartments complexes. Most of the apartments complexes are BOI ventures. Required minimum investment is US $3 million. But they should construct not less than 25 houses or housing units in not more than 4 locations. Otherwise, people will use to construct their own houses using BOI status and to import project-related item on duty-free basis. To restrict that kind of activities, we have imposed minimum number of housing units. Then most important sector will be information technology and information technology enabled services. For that activity, we have not a specified minimum investment, but 15 technically qualified local person should employ by that company. And another important sector is business process outsourcing. You know that the present world BPO is playing very wide role. Therefore, we categorize this sector as a trust sector. And required minimum investment is US dollars 150,000, and the company should receive not less than 70% of turnover in convertible foreign currency. Likewise, there are 18 categories in open for foreign or local investors to have their BOI ventures. These 18 categories we can categorize into the 5 broad sectors. You can see these sectors now: manufacturing, ICT, hospitality and tourism, agriculture and food processing, construction and infrastructure. Then incentives. Why investors come to BOI? Without actually, for our service, we charge considerable amount of money for application processing fee, agreement processing fee, annual fee. By paying huge amount of money, the investors will come to BOI for a reason. That is the incentives. The BOI will grant 2 types of incentives. First one is fiscal incentives. You can see we can grant incentives under Inland Revenue Act. Under Inland Revenue Act, we will provide reduced tax rates, then tax reduction, sometimes tax exemptions, and enhanced capital allowances. Please visit our website. You can see all the information. No time to explain everything. And also, these topics are very technical. Then another fiscal incentive is PEL and cess and VAT reduction and exemption. The using provision of PEL Act, cess Act and Value-Added Tax Act, we are granting exemption for BOI companies. Then most important thing is customs duty exemption. Since custom ordinance included to the Schedule B of the BOI Act, we have power to overrule or supersede the custom ordinance. By using that power, BOI will grant approval to import project-related items on free of custom duty. That would be a huge advantage for the BOI companies. As I explained earlier, the BOI company, if an export-oriented project, that custom duty exemptions will apply for the lifetime of the project. They can import required raw material and other accessories on duty-free basis for export. Also, they can import the capital goods required for setting up of this company, such as machinery, buildings, and other construction equipment and materials on duty-free basis. Then we will grant some exemptions under the hub regulation. Hub regulation is a newly framed regulation. It is actually, we are granting 5 main categories. exemption for 5 main categories. Then non-fiscal. Other incentive is non-fiscal incentive. Non-fiscal incentive. What are the non-fiscal incentives? First one is foreign equity. Sri Lanka accept 100% foreign ownership, except for certain categories. As I explained under section 16 of the BOI project category, certain type of investment, we are limiting foreign ownership. But other than that, 100% foreign ownership is accepted. Then other non-fiscal incentive is repatriation of earnings. All income proceed on sales of investments can be repatriated through an IIA account opened by the investor. If foreign investors need to wind up his business in Sri Lanka, he can sell their property, plant, and assets, and he should remit this sales proceeds, to the inward investment account, and through that account, he can send back. That is permitted. Then contribution of the BUI to the national economy. First one, the main objective of setting up of the BOI is attracting foreign direct investment. We call FDI. Why we need FDI? FDI needs to fill the gap between domestic savings and investment. Actually, to achieve expected GDP growth, there should be a good FDI inflow into the country. Then otherwise, we have to depend on the debt. But servicing debt is very painful to the country. Now we are experiencing that painfulness. Therefore, the best mode for fill the gap between domestic savings and investment is the FDI. Therefore, we are trying to attract FDI as much as possible. You can see the cumulative FDI trend from 1978 to 2020. In this graph, according to this graph, in 2018, we have achieved highest FDI, but we can see some downward trend because of that COVID. Then in this graph shows main FDI contributed to Sri Lanka. As you all are aware, China is the main FDI contributor. Then Hong Kong. Third one is Malaysia. Fourth one is India. Fifth one is UK. Likewise, we have categorized top 25 FDI contributors in this graph. This is the FDI attraction. FDI received cumulative from 2005 to 2020 by sector. According to this graph, highest FDI attraction was for telephone and telecommunication network. Then second one for housing and property development and shopping and office complexes, represent 16%. Second one is manufacturing, 24%. Third one, housing and property development. Likewise, you can see the FDI contribution to the Sri Lanka in this graph. BOI provides facilities for domestic investors as well. This graph will show the contribution of domestic investors to the national economy. Actually, according to this graph, the manufacturing sector, 46% of manufacturing sector filled by domestic investors. Then another important sector was hotel and restaurant. Likewise, you can see FDI trends from domestic investment. Then BOI contribution to the export, we can see in this graph. 66% of total export of Sri Lanka, the BOI contributed as a percentage of BOI export is 66% from total export of Sri Lanka. It means 34% from non-BOI companies. 85% of industrial export contributed by BOI companies. Therefore, we are playing very wide role in export of goods. You know that Sri Lanka produce world-class apparels, solid tires, sometimes very sensitive equipment, like one of the BOI company produce sensors for Boeing. Another company provides seat belt sensors for Toyota and other main automobile manufacturers. Therefore, our contribution for export is very high. Then employment. According to the objective of setting up a BOI, one is providing employment opportunities for locals. We have achieved that target. In actually total employment in BOI companies over 500,000. It will represent, I think, 30% of the total employment. BOI plans. You can see our contribution to the national economy. At present, there are 1,600 companies operating under the BOI. Some companies are 100% foreign ownership. Some companies are 100% local ownership, and some are joint ventures. Also, FDI inflow since 1978 to 2020 is US $19 billion. Actually, if we get this 19 billion as a debt, you can imagine the painfulness for servicing that debt. So, actually, BOI contributes 6% of total labor force in the country. Then another important role of BOI, as I explained earlier, the setting up of and operating of BOI zones. At present, we have 12 BOI zones. You can see these zones. Some zones are export processing zone. Some zones are industrial park, and some zones are industrial processing park. In these zones, we will provide all required infrastructure for the investors for smooth operation of the companies without harassment of others. You know, outside the BOI zone, sometimes we can see public protest against companies and sometimes environmental, due to some environmental problem. But in that BOI zones, investors are free from that kind of harassment. Also, we are providing good road network, uninterrupted electricity, and most importantly, wastewater treatment. Some specific industrial export, they need a solution for disposal of their wastewater. All BOI zones, majority of BOI zones, we have our centralized wastewater treatment plant. We will purify the all wastewater and we will provide this service for the investors for their smooth and uninterrupted operation. Also, electricity and telecommunication services are available in all BOI zones without any interruption. Now we are developing two major zones. One is Eraur. That zone, especially for the manufacturing of textiles. For textile manufacturing, wastewater treatment plant is essential. This zone will have a wastewater treatment plant with sea outfall. Second one is pharmaceutical zone in Arabukka, Hambantota. You know that there are considerable amount of foreign exchange withdrawn out of Sri Lanka for importation of pharmaceutical. To give a sustainable solution for this problem, the BOI will set up a pharma zone in Hambantota, and we will invite investors to set up their manufacturing plant for local market as well as export. This is the pharmaceutical zone, proposed pharmaceutical zone, Hambantota, Arabukka. Under phase 1, we have identified 200 acres for 20 companies. Already some companies have lodged their application to set up these companies. Under phase 2, another 200 acres will be developed. We will expect export revenue of $1 billion by 2025 for export of pharmaceutical. Then we will expect to fulfill 40% of domestic demand for pharmaceutical products by 2025 by setting up of these zones. Also, there will be direct and indirect employment generation in very difficult areas in Hambantota, Arabukka. To attract more investors for pharmaceutical zones, the cabinet granted approval to declare this zone as dedicated pharmaceutical zone as under the Strategic Development Projects Act. It means the all companies who set up in their manufacturing unit in these zones will be granted very attractive concessions. Now we have completed environmental impact assessment of the proposed zone. The second one I told you, textile zone in Eraur. These are the highlight of these zones. The identified land extent is 300 acres. Also, we have identified additional another 100 acres on future requirement. Actually, now as you know, the textile and fabric is the first number one export in Sri Lanka. But we are not producing fabric or accessories for that export. We are highly dependent on import. Though we are earning money and though we are telling our number one export is textile and apparel. To cater this requirement, we will set up this zone. Then we expect to save foreign exchange by import substitution of fabrics. Actually, the progress is EIA process for the Eraur zone has been initiated and waiting for final report. BOI is in the process of providing essential utilities for zones. Now electricity was completed and road already we have constructed, and there are 2-3 companies already lodged the application for setting up of very large scale zones in Eraur. Way forward. Why Sri Lanka? Actually, strategic why investors come to Sri Lanka. We can explain this slide. The reason to come to Sri Lanka. Actually, Sri Lanka is a strategic location to gain from east-west shipping and air freight routes and gateway into the large and growing South Asian consumer market, especially for India, Pakistan market. We have signed free trade agreement with India and Pakistan. Then investors who are setting up of the projects in Sri Lanka can easily send their goods to India and Pakistan over 300, about 3,000 goods items to free of customs duty to these countries. Also, Colombo is an attractive and livable city when compared to region, South Asian region. Then ideal for regional headquarters. I would tell you that during this COVID situation, the very large Indian company called HCL set up their business in Sri Lanka because of that reason. Then now another advantage for Sri Lanka is trainable workforce. Our literacy rate is very high. Therefore, our young people can train for any job very easily. Therefore, the investors are willing to set up their projects in Sri Lanka, especially our universities provide very good IT educated youth. Then for IT and ICT companies are ready to absorb this generation in their companies. New mega projects transforming the socio-economic landscape, generating range of new opportunities. In Colombo, you can see lot of mega projects, upcoming mega projects like Port City, waterfront. You can see that building, that iconic building. This kind of new development will provide lot of opportunities. New restaurant, cinema, recreation activities will help to attract foreign investors. Way forward. Actually, BOI focusing more toward attracting local and foreign investment to identify target sectors, special focus on linking small and medium enterprises from global value chain. It will help to increase employees for Sri Lankans as well as increase the FDI inflow. We are introducing an attractive incentive scheme to compare with regional peers. There are many competitors for Sri Lanka for attracting FDI, especially Vietnam, Cambodia, even India. That's why we are introducing Strategic Development Project Act to give more incentives for large-scale project. Then government has initiated developing skill to match the industry demand. For certain categories, we can't find required person. Therefore, our universities should play a big role to meet that demand. Also, we are improving client agency coordination to promote Sri Lanka for investment, because foreign investors will not tolerate unnecessary delays. We can't post them, failure to post for approval. Therefore, interconnected line agency approval system should be implemented immediately. Then I will complete my presentation. I think I was able to give some kind of highlight and idea about the BOI and its contribution to the national economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful insights on the role of Board of Investment in economic development of Sri Lanka. Dear participants, if you have any questions or point of clarification, you may directly ask Mr. Wilegoda, sir. He's very happy to answer your questions. Or you may send your questions via chat box.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
Sir, I am the amiga. I have. Yeah, there is no chance to register traditional business and BOI company.
Yes.
Then is there any how we can divide like solid tires company from the traditional?
Actually, solid tire is not a traditional business. Traditional means tea, mainly tea, rubber, coconut and paddy. We have mentioned in our website and all promotional brochures. Those are the traditional exports.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I received a question in the chat box, sir. May I read the questions?
Please send me.
Okay. How will Board of Investment interact with the port city?
Actually, Port City itself a BOI company. For development of Port City, they have signed agreement with BOI under Section 17 of BOI law. Therefore, we are providing concession, mainly duty-free facility to set up. Set up means actually they are reclaiming land now. For reclamation of that land, all necessary equipment and raw material will be imported through the BOI on free of customs duty. That is our role. It is BOI company. We have signed agreement with them, and it is Port City also under BOI.
The second question, sir. Can investments through BOI, for example, in real estate, be repatriated by selling the investments, or that is not allowed?
Actually, that for this category, the real estate development will be limited to the local. And for actually, if you mean selling of land, BOI will not facilitate land sales business. But any foreigner can lease out land